The law of initiation. This is one of the least talked about esoteric laws because it doesn't feel mystical when you're inside it. It feels confusing, lonely, and sometimes unfair. But at its core, this law explains why real growth never happens comfortably. The law of initiation states that before a person can access a higher level of awareness, power, or responsibility, they must first pass through a period of testing and inner transformation. Initiation is not a ritual or a secret ceremony. Those are just symbols. Real initiation happens in real life. It shows up as moments where your old identity stops working. Things you relied on begin to fall apart. You feel disconnected from who you used to be, but you're not yet sure who you're becoming. This in-between state is not a mistake. It's the beginning of initiation. The first stage of initiation is separation. This is when life starts removing what no longer fits your next level. Relationships change. Old habits lose their grip. Comfort fades. You may feel lost, abandoned, or misunderstood. But what's really happening is that you're being detached from an outdated version of yourself. You can't step into something new while still clinging to what you've already outgrown. The second stage is the trial. This is the hardest part. There's confusion, silence, and pressure. Guidance disappears. Signs stop showing up. You're forced to rely on your own judgment instead of external validation. This stage tests your integrity, patience, and self-trust. Many people fail here not because they're weak, but because they try to escape the discomfort instead of learning from it. The final stage is integration. If you endure the trial without betraying yourself, something shifts. You don't suddenly feel powerful or enlightened. Instead, you feel steady. You react less emotionally. You stop chasing approval. You understand yourself better. The reward of initiation isn't status or recognition. It's clarity, inner alignment, and quiet confidence. Initiation feels personal because it is. Each person's initiation targets their deepest fear, strongest attachment, or biggest illusion. That's why no two initiations look the same. What pushes one person forward might break another. Life designs the test specifically for the individual. Initiation is promotion. It's life preparing you to carry more responsibility without losing yourself in the process. The law of silence teaches that true power, clarity, and transformation grow in quiet, not noise. In esoteric understanding, silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's the absence of unnecessary expression. The more something is still forming, the less it wants to be spoken about. Most people think talking makes things real. This law says the opposite. Talking too early weakens energy. When you speak before something is stable, you expose it to doubt, interference, and external influence. Silence protects what is still becoming. This is why periods of growth often feel quiet. When someone is truly changing, they usually stop explaining themselves. They stop announcing plans. They stop arguing, not because they have nothing to say, but because they're conserving energy. Silence is how inner work is sealed. The law of silence also explains why guidance disappears during important phases of life. When you're being initiated into a higher level of awareness, the noise fades. Advice feels unhelpful. Signs become rare. This isn't abandonment, it's training. Silence forces you to listen inward instead of constantly seeking direction outside yourself. There's also a psychological side to this law. When you talk excessively, you leak emotional energy. Complaining, over-explaining, defending yourself, or constantly sharing your plans keeps you stuck in reaction mode. Silence interrupts that cycle. It creates space for observation instead of impulse. In many esoteric traditions, initiates were sworn to silence for a reason, not to hide secrets, but to protect understanding. Knowledge that is spoken without embodiment becomes empty. Silence allows wisdom to mature before it's expressed. This law doesn't mean you should never speak. It means you should speak intentionally. Words are tools. Silence is a container. Without silence, words lose weight. Without silence, intention scatters. The law of inner alignment. This states that life responds not to what you say you want, but to what you are internally aligned with. Your outer reality reflects your dominant inner state, your beliefs, emotions, values, and self-image, not your intentions alone. Most people try to change outcomes without changing alignment. They chase goals while internally doubting themselves. They speak confidence while feeling fear. They desire growth while clinging to comfort. This creates friction. When your inner world and outer actions don't match, progress feels forced and unstable. Inner alignment happens when your thoughts, emotions, and actions point in the same direction. You don't just want something mentally, you believe it's possible, feel worthy of it, and act in ways that support it. When this alignment is present, effort feels lighter and resistance reduces. This law explains why some people achieve results quickly while others struggle despite working hard. It's not luck or talent, it's coherence. When your inner state supports your goal, reality stops pushing back. When it doesn't, life creates obstacles to expose the misalignment. Misalignment often shows up as exhaustion, procrastination, self-sabotage, or constant second-guessing. These aren't personal flaws, they're signals. They're telling you that something inside you doesn't fully agree with the direction you're moving. People who live in inner alignment move differently. They're calm under pressure. They make decisions faster. They don't need constant reassurance. Even when things don't work out, they recover quickly because their center is stable. The law of inner alignment teaches one core truth. When you align internally, the external follows naturally. You don't have to force life. You simply have to become coherent with what you're asking for. The law of focused will. This states that energy follows sustained intention, not scattered desire. What you repeatedly choose to direct your attention, effort, and decision-making toward is what gains strength in your life. Most people think willpower is about forcing results. In reality, will is about direction, not strain. When your will is unfocused, energy leaks. You want many things, pull in multiple directions, and end up feeling busy but stuck. Focused will concentrates energy into a single channel, allowing momentum to build. This law explains why consistency often beats talent. Someone with moderate ability but focused will outpace someone with high potential but scattered attention. Focus turns effort into pressure, and pressure turns intention into reality. Focused will requires choosing one priority at a time, not because other goals don't matter, but because divided will weakens results. Every time you shift focus impulsively, you reset progress. Depth always produces more than constant switching. The law of focused will teaches a simple truth. What you consistently commit your will to becomes unavoidable, not through force but through sustained direction. The law of balance. This states that everything in life seeks equilibrium. Growth, power, emotion, ambition, and even spirituality must be balanced, or they eventually create instability. Most people think imbalance shows up as failure. In reality, it often shows up as excess. Too much work without rest leads to burnout. Too much control leads to rigidity. Too much detachment leads to emptiness. Balance is not about avoiding extremes, but about knowing when to counter them. This law explains why rapid success often comes with sudden collapse. When growth happens faster than emotional or mental capacity can handle, life applies pressure to restore balance. The correction may feel like loss, delay, or limitation, but its purpose is stabilization, not punishment. Balance also applies internally. When logic dominates emotion, intuition weakens. When emotion dominates logic, clarity disappears. When spirituality ignores practicality, life becomes unstable. Balance allows different aspects of the self to support each other instead of competing. The law of balance doesn't mean staying neutral or passive. It means adjusting intelligently. There are moments to push forward and moments to pause, moments to speak and moments to stay silent. Wisdom is knowing which is required. People who understand this law move with rhythm instead of force. They recover faster from stress. They don't overreact to success or failure. They know that extremes correct themselves, but awareness allows the correction to be gentle instead of destructive. The law of gender. This states that everything in existence carries both masculine and feminine principles. These are not about biological sex. They are energetic qualities that govern creation, movement, and expression in all things. The masculine principle represents direction, structure, logic, action, and will. It initiates, protects, and pushes forward. The feminine principle represents receptivity, intuition, creativity, emotion, and flow. It nurtures, receives, and transforms. Neither is superior. Creation requires both. This law explains why imbalance creates dysfunction. When the masculine dominates without the feminine, life becomes rigid, aggressive, and disconnected. When the feminine dominates without the masculine, life becomes chaotic, unfocused, and unstable. Harmony comes from cooperation, not dominance. In spiritual traditions, the union of masculine and feminine is considered a high state of consciousness. It represents inner wholeness, action guided by intuition, strength softened by awareness, and creativity supported by discipline. The law of transmutation. This states that energy is never destroyed, only transformed. Emotions, thoughts, experiences, and circumstances do not disappear. They change form. What you don't consciously transform will express itself unconsciously. Most people try to suppress unwanted emotions like fear, anger, pain, or desire. This law explains why that never works. Suppressed energy doesn't vanish. It leaks out as stress, self-sabotage, illness, or repeated patterns. Transmutation happens when energy is redirected, not resisted. In esoteric understanding, so-called negative emotions are not bad. They are raw energy. Fear contains alertness. Anger contains drive. Pain contains depth. When these energies are refined through awareness, discipline and intention, they become fuel instead of obstacles. This law explains why pressure often precedes growth. Difficult experiences generate intense energy. If a person remains unconscious, that energy hardens into trauma. If they become aware, the same energy becomes strength, insight, or creative force. The difference is not the experience, but how it's processed. Transmutation requires presence. You cannot transform what you refuse to feel. Observing an emotion without reacting to it allows its form to change naturally. This is why many spiritual and psychological practices focus on awareness rather than control. The law of transmutation also applies to desire and ambition. Wanting something intensely is not a problem. The problem is fixation. When desire is refined, it becomes purpose. When obsession is refined, it becomes mastery. Energy always rises to the level of consciousness directing it. People who understand this law don't waste pain. They don't romanticize it either. They extract meaning, direction, and power from it. Over time, this creates emotional resilience and inner authority. The law of transmutation teaches a simple truth. You don't eliminate energy, you elevate it. What once pulled you down can become what moves you forward. The law of intention. This states that outcomes are shaped not just by actions, but by the intention behind them. Two people can do the same thing, take the same steps, and put in the same effort, yet get completely different results because their inner motive is different. Most people confuse intention with desire. Desire is wanting something. Intention is deciding from within. It's the quiet agreement you make with yourself about why you're acting. Intention directs energy before action even begins. This law explains why forced effort often leads to burnout. When action is driven by fear, insecurity, or the need for approval, progress feels heavy. But when action is driven by clarity and purpose, effort feels lighter and more sustainable, even when the work is hard. Intention also shapes how reality responds to you. When your intention is aligned, opportunities appear more naturally. When your intention is conflicted, obstacles multiply. Life doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you're consistently reinforcing inside.